George Russell might have become a meme in his career, but his driving is no joke. Fast throughout support formula, outperforming his Williams multiple times in that car, and that infamous trial race for Mercedes around the Sakir Oval, to now cementing his place in the team full-time from 2022. So with rumours swirling around about confirming a new contract beyond 2026, here's why George and Mercedes should put pen to paper for 2026 and beyond. Let's get into it. George needs no introduction, with a great racing pedigree, winning in Formula 3 and taking the Formula 2 title in his debut season. Then jumping over to Williams in 2019, he helped build the team up more than above its weight that it carried. Claire Williams, team principal at the time, sung his praises and helped George progress onto the first step of the F1 grid with the help of the Mercedes Junior Driver Program. In his time at Williams, he had so many highlights, including that incredible P2 in qualifying. And for me, this was like one of the first moments I feel like we really saw his ability to read the conditions and risk it all when it counted. He timed the conditions and the track evolution perfectly. He was on pole position for a moment before Verstappen came and stole the show in that qualifying. Aside from that magical moment in Spa, he also had strong performances, bringing up the Williams car higher than it should have been, with point finishes in Hungary, Italy and Russia too, showing that Spa wasn't just a fluke. And by the end of 2021, he'd shown more than enough that he was worth signing. But what about the first taste of the top step of the grid that he got in 2020 with Mercedes? What could have been? Starting the race well, he looked like he was just going to jump in the car in a cockpit that was too small for him because Hamilton was way shorter than George, and still bring it home in P1. It was incredible. I remember watching it live, and the team radioed and told him that one of the tyres had a puncture. And if you were like me at that moment in the race, where you were really like vying for George to do well and just pull off the unthinkable, you were just, the head was in your hands. We could have witnessed a great moment. I do dispute though, looking back, I do wonder whether it was actually a puncture and whether it looked a bit dodgy if Mercedes just had this new driver jump in for the very first time and go and win it and make their car look almost too superior in that year of the grid. So George pitted and caught back up to the leader, Perez, in what was an incredible race for him as well, we can't forget. It seemed that George was going to pull off the roller coaster of the race, but again the team had made another mistake. Putting on the wrong tyre that wasn't part of that set, so he had to pit again, all but eliminating his goodwill and adrenaline that he'd built up throughout that race. Despite all that though, whether you believe in the conspiracies around that Grand Prix or not, George had shown more than enough of his abilities, and that he was probably going to be a big factor in Mercedes signing him for 2022 and beyond. I bet they never forgot about that race. And from joining the team proper in 2022, it was going to go either way, wasn't it, with the big change of regulations that happened at the beginning of that season, with Mercedes at the time, revolutionary zero-pod design, but caused some stress throughout the first part of the season, I think it's fair to say, despite 7 podiums before an impressive win in Brazil at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It was a bit of a come down for a Mercedes team that had been so used to just winning everything and dominating the whole hybrid era up to that point. From there until now, highlights have included podiums in 2023, which was a winless season, but there were podiums in Spain and Abu Dhabi. But then last season, wins in Austria and Las Vegas, with a podium in Canada and Azerbaijan as well last year, kind of showed his class and his improvements in his consistency. Yes, there were a lot of positives for George, and there still is, of course, to this very day, but his will-to-will combat was starting to be questioned somewhat, a little bit. And okay, not the recent battle with Verstappen in Catalonia, which was a slam dunk, but when he was under pressure to make the pass on the last lap of the Singapore Grand Prix in 2023, he crashed out of the race with doubts cast over his racecraft. He did have the pace to go and move up that grid in that race. But if we're being honest, in 2025, right here, right now, he seems he's really stepped it up and found an incredible run of form with 4 podiums already, a much stronger start to the season, a great pole position and converted victory in Canada around the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve last time out when he had the pace throughout the whole weekend. Russell joined Mercedes to emulate the success of the team in years prior, to win championships and stand on the top step of the podium as much as possible. So his recent performance in Montreal has come at a great time, you would say, as rumours have been circling around for the last few races about what George's future looks like beyond 2026. So there's a pretty relaxed feeling around George's future at the moment, but you'd think they want to get a shift on. We've seen some movements in recent weeks in a move that I didn't think anyone would see coming, and to most people might seem a bit of an unusual choice. But it's been claimed that Russell has been having talks with Christian Horner at Red Bull, but how likely at all would that seem for him to go to Red Bull? George has been with Mercedes right throughout his career, so to jump ship when Toto gave him a chance against one of the greatest of all time in Lewis Hamilton, and on the whole showed up going across to his rivals, it doesn't really sit right with maybe me and probably a lot of you. Of course, like Martin Brundle has said this before, it's fairly normal for drivers to go up and down the paddock and sort of canvass opinion as to what is out there, you know, look out for themselves, the future, try and elongate their time in the sport. Can't help but think though that these discussions and talk of George has been fueled by, I would define it as like a pre-silly season thing going on right now, and the doubt over Max Verstappen's future, which has been unsteady in the last few months, or at least that's what the media have been saying about Max and the relationship with Red Bull and the top ownership of the team. And given those changes within the team in recent times, you can understand the instability. And by the way, there's a video I've made on that right round here somewhere right now. And that fact is that Max could be looking elsewhere to propel his title chances for 2026 and beyond. Is that really likely? So if we are playing devil's advocate on that very point, why are drivers like Max so interested in Mercedes beyond 2026? Well, Mercedes is thought to be well ahead in the development of the new regulations coming into the 2026 season, with a greater focus on the power unit moving to an equivalent 50-50 distribution between the electrical energy and the naturally aspirated combustion part of the power unit. And if history is anything to go by, when we had such a big change when these hybrid power units were brought in the 2014 regulations, you could argue this driver change and switch in this point in time going into 2026 could be the most significant in a very long time in the sport, and as we've seen, carry this form into the rest of this new era. So it's no wonder that Mercedes find themselves in a bit of a luxurious position, given the word on the grapevine that they are maybe the team to beat going into 2026. I'm breaking it down, it'd be odd to see Kimi Antonelli moving on as well, given how he's been doing such a great job at Mercedes, thrown in at the deep end and securing a double podium for the team in Montreal alongside George. It doesn't look like something that they'll just want to throw away after people thinking at the time that choosing Antonelli, well, it looked like a bit of a risk. But it looks far from that now, and it really seems to be paying off. But another caveat with George is that Red Bull aren't the only team to be interested in his services. Another exciting prospect for 2026, given the arrival of Adrian Newey, is that of Aston Martin. They've invested huge amounts of money, resources in their Silverstone complex and wind tunnels, trying to grow and future-proof the team to fight for world titles beyond 2026. And Lance Stroll has been long talked about losing his seat and moving into hypercars, but of course his father, Lawrence Stroll, or Daddy Stroll to me and you, owns the team and he calls the shots. So you'd think that's always been quite unlikely to happen. But will this straw finally break with the input of Adrian Newey now saying that maybe things need to change if they want to seriously challenge for the title and have two very strong drivers vying for that world championship? So there's threats from a couple of angles here, but you'd like to think that George reiterating his loyalty to Mercedes since he was a junior. He will re-sign with the team, and how long the contract might be will be an interesting one to see, that's for sure. And if there's any hold-ups for any reason at the moment, maybe it is around the length of that contract. If Russell were to sign with Mercedes for 2026 and onwards, what might that look like for the Brackley base? Well, as we discussed earlier, George has steadily stepped up his performances in the W16 this season in 2025, riding high off an impressive display in Montreal, and can see he's steadily built each season with the team that he's been in the garage to be securing this place and posture himself as the number one for the team. And should Mercedes be as dominant or competitive as they are expected to be next season, you can certainly see it might be the time that Russell would achieve his dream and his real first hunt and proper sniff at getting that World Drivers title. And really, if you think about it, in such a short time, the dynamic that George and Kimi are building together, it's a strong one. And to have Max come in with his elbows out and aggressive as he might be with his driving style and the way he conducts himself and how sure and confident of himself that he is, it doesn't seem appealing that they'd want to rock Kimi's boat too much, having given him that sort of pedestal very, very recently. And that, to be fair to say, would be a whole other dynamic to get used to and to manage as a team for Toto and his pit wall. You wouldn't think that's something they'd want to be wishing on themselves too much. There's no reason then why George will end up staying where he is and help build the foundations he's already laid in the team even higher, especially as he's helped them through the more difficult times with the car having its lack of pace in the last couple of seasons off the back of 2021. He's driven the team forward up to now, and where it's really starting to reap the rewards, it seems, here in 2025, and in what is more of a bit of an open season than some had predicted to start with in 2025, with the McLarens not always delivering when it counts. So what do you think will happen with George and Mercedes? Is it a no-brainer? Should they just sign on the dotted line? Let me know what you think in the comments and we can carry it on after this video. And I'll catch you in the next one.